In the vast expanse of an alien desert, where twin suns scorched the golden sands and strange rock formations rose like ancient sentinels, a small river meandered through the arid landscape. This was no ordinary river. Its waters shimmered with hues of violet and silver, reflecting the peculiar sky above. On its banks lay a human man, barely conscious, his body battered and clothes torn from what appeared to be days of wandering through this hostile environment. The man, whom we shall call Marcus, had crash-landed on this unknown planet after his experimental spacecraft malfunctioned during a routine test flight. His last memory before blacking out was of his ship spiraling uncontrollably through the atmosphere, pieces breaking away as fire engulfed the cockpit. Now, as he struggled to open his eyes against the harsh light, every breath felt like inhaling needles of sand. From behind one of the crystalline rock formations emerged two figures that would change Marcus's fate forever. They moved with an otherworldly grace, their elongated limbs gliding across the sand without leaving any visible tracks. The first, named Lyria, stood nearly 7 feet tall, her skin possessing an iridescent quality that shifted between shades of emerald and sapphire. Her hair floated around her head like living silk, responding to some unseen current in the air. The second, slightly shorter but equally striking, called herself Venara. Her form radiated warmth, her amber-colored skin adorned with intricate patterns that seemed to pulse gently, mimicking her heartbeat. Both women wore garments that defied human understanding, flowing fabrics that appeared both solid and liquid, changing colors according to their emotions. Their eyes, large and almond-shaped, held galaxies within them, swirling with intelligence far beyond human comprehension. Despite their alien appearance, there was something inherently compassionate about their presence, something that reached past species barriers and touched the core of Marcus's struggling consciousness. As they approached the dying human, Lyria extended her hand, palm up, while Venara knelt beside him. Their movements were careful, deliberate, as if handling something precious yet fragile. Through waves of pain and confusion, Marcus registered their voices, melodic tones that resonated directly with his soul rather than his ears. Though he couldn't understand their words, the intent was clear. Help was here, salvation offered by beings who shouldn't exist in his reality. Lyria and Venara exchanged glances, their communication silent yet complete. Without hesitation, they lifted Marcus between them, their strength surprising given their lithe forms. As they carried him away from the riverbank, the shimmering water seemed to reach out toward him, as if reluctant to let go of its unexpected visitor. The journey ahead would prove challenging, not just for Marcus's survival, but for the delicate balance of understanding between 3 vastly different beings bound together by circumstance and emerging compassion. The shelter that Lyria and Venara brought Marcus to wasn't just a simple dwelling. It was a living structure that responded to their touch and thoughts. The walls pulsed softly with bioluminescent patterns, casting gentle light across curved surfaces that seemed to breathe in rhythm with the occupants. Marcus, still weak but gradually regaining strength, found himself lying on a bed that adapted to his form, its surface cool and healing against his damaged skin. Venara took charge of his immediate care, her hands moving with practiced precision as she applied salves made from the glowing plants that grew near the river. Each touch sent waves of soothing energy through Marcus's body, though he couldn't decide whether it was the medicine or her presence that healed him more effectively. Lyria, meanwhile, worked on understanding his basic needs, using trial and error to figure out which foods from their world his human system could process. Their kitchen area produced strange fruits that changed color when ripe, and drinks that sparkled like captured starlight. Communication proved both frustrating and fascinating. Marcus would gesture wildly, trying to explain concepts like Earth's weather patterns or human technology, while Lyria would respond with elaborate light displays projected from her fingertips. Venara developed a system of pictographs, drawing images in the air that lingered for moments before fading. Slowly, they began to bridge the gap between their worlds, each misunderstanding leading to bursts of shared laughter when clarity finally emerged. Humor became their universal language. When Marcus accidentally activated the gravity controls in their home, causing everything to float comically upward, including his dinner, Lyria's musical laugh filled the space. In retaliation, she demonstrated how to properly use the controls, but not before making him float helplessly for several minutes while Venara recorded the entire scene with her holographic device. The footage would later become a source of constant amusement, played back whenever Marcus attempted to master their technology again. Yet beneath the laughter and growing friendship, challenges emerged. Marcus's body reacted strangely to their atmosphere at night, causing violent allergic reactions that left him gasping for air. Venara stayed by his side during these episodes, her warm presence somehow stabilizing his condition. Lyria, ever the problem solver, modified parts of their home to create a protective bubble around his sleeping area, ensuring he could rest safely. These moments of vulnerability deepened their bond, creating a foundation of trust that transcended their physical differences. As weeks turned into months, their relationship evolved naturally. Marcus taught them about human music, creating makeshift instruments from materials they provided. The sound of his voice singing earth songs echoed through their living space, while Lyria and Venara responded with harmonies that seemed to come from another dimension entirely. They introduced him to their version of storytelling, projecting memories into the air like living holograms, sharing tales of their people's history and culture. The physical attraction between them developed slowly, almost imperceptibly. It wasn't just about appearance, though Marcus found their alien features increasingly beautiful, but about the way they connected on fundamental levels. Venara's touch could calm his anxiety with a single brush of her fingers, while Lyria's gaze seemed to see straight through his defenses, understanding his fears and hopes better than anyone ever had. Their differences became points of fascination rather than division, each discovery about the other sparking new appreciation and desire. One evening, as the twin moons cast their silver light through the translucent ceiling, Marcus found himself caught between them, teaching them a human card game that quickly descended into chaos and laughter. In that moment, surrounded by their unique beauty and shared joy, he realized he'd never felt more at home in his life. The thought of leaving, should he ever regain the ability to do so, suddenly seemed unbearable. Their peaceful existence shattered one fateful morning when the ground trembled violently, sending shockwaves through their living structure. Lyria's sensitive hearing picked up distant rumblings long before Marcus felt anything, her normally serene expression twisting into one of concern. Straneth Raiders, she explained using their newly developed hybrid language, pointing toward the horizon where dust clouds were gathering ominously. Venara immediately activated the shelter's defensive systems, causing the walls to harden and extend protective tendrils around vulnerable areas. Marcus, still learning the ways of this alien world, struggled to comprehend the severity of the situation until Lyria thrust a weapon into his hands, a sleek device that hummed with contained energy. "You must protect us," she insisted, her usually fluid movements now sharp with urgency. Venara positioned herself at the main entrance, her body glowing with intensified patterns that suggested she was channeling significant power. The sight of these fierce warriors preparing for battle transformed Marcus's perception of his gentle caretakers, revealing depths of strength he'd never suspected. The Straneth arrived in ships that looked like living creatures, their organic hulls pulsating as they disgorged dozens of armored figures. Unlike Lyria and Venara's elegant forms, these invaders were brutish and heavily armed, their weapons crackling with destructive potential. When the first wave attacked, Marcus discovered that his weapon responded to his thoughts, firing bolts of energy that could disable enemy equipment without causing lethal harm. This revelation came just in time as he helped repel boarders attempting to breach their sanctuary. During the chaos, Marcus witnessed scenes that would haunt his dreams. Venara creating force fields that absorbed incoming attacks while simultaneously launching counteroffensives, her patterns blazing like living fire. Lyria moving like liquid mercury, disarming opponents with precise strikes that exploited weaknesses in their armor. Yet, despite their superior abilities, the odds were overwhelming. A particularly powerful blast breached their defenses, sending Marcus flying backward into a wall. Before he could recover, a Straneth warrior loomed over him, weapon raised. What happened next defied explanation. Both Lyria and Venara simultaneously cried out in distress, their bodies emitting a brilliant light that forced the attacker to retreat. More astonishing was Marcus's own reaction. His hands began to glow with the same energy patterns as his protectors, instinctively generating a shield that repelled further attacks. This unexpected development turned the tide of battle, giving them the upper hand needed to drive the invaders away. After the fighting ceased, the trio found themselves physically and emotionally drained. Venara tended to Marcus's injuries with trembling hands, while Lyria examined the damage to their home, her usual composed demeanor replaced with visible worry. The experience had forged an unbreakable link between them. Marcus had fought alongside these women not just as a beneficiary of their protection, but as an equal participant in their defense. The realization that he'd unconsciously manifested their defensive abilities suggested a deeper connection than any of them had anticipated, one that transcended mere physical proximity. As Marcus recovered from the battle, he noticed subtle changes in his own physiology. His reflexes had sharpened dramatically, allowing him to catch falling objects with ease. His night vision improved to the point where he could navigate their dim corridors without assistance. Most startling was his newfound sensitivity to the planet's electromagnetic field. He could sense approaching storms hours before they arrived, much like Lyria and Venara had always done. These transformations weren't purely physical. He found himself understanding their language more intuitively, grasping complex concepts that had previously eluded him. Lyria spent countless hours studying these changes, her scientific curiosity piqued by this unprecedented phenomenon. She discovered that during the battle, Marcus's DNA had begun to incorporate elements of their genetic code, facilitated by the mysterious energy field that permeated their world. This biological fusion explained his enhanced abilities but raised troubling questions about long-term consequences. Venara, meanwhile, focused on helping Marcus cope with the emotional aspects of his transformation. She taught him meditation techniques that allowed him to control his heightened senses, preventing sensory overload that might otherwise overwhelm him. The implications of these changes weighed heavily on all of them. Marcus found himself caught between two worlds, no longer fully human, yet not completely belonging to their society either. His reflection in the polished metal surface of their home showed eyes that occasionally flickered with internal light, skin that sometimes shimmered faintly under certain angles of light. These physical manifestations of his transformation served as constant reminders of how far he'd drifted from his original identity. Their relationship dynamics shifted accordingly. Where once Marcus had been the student, now he contributed valuable insights born from his unique perspective as both human and alien. He helped Lyria develop new defensive technologies based on human engineering principles combined with their advanced science. With Venara, he explored the intersection of their healing arts, discovering innovative treatments that leveraged his hybrid nature. Yet these advancements came at a cost. Marcus often experienced periods of intense homesickness, yearning for aspects of human life he could never fully recapture. The tension between adaptation and identity reached a peak when Marcus received a message from Earth. A rescue team had finally located his crashed vessel and was en route to retrieve him. The news struck like a physical blow, forcing all three to confront the reality of their situation. Lyria and Venara had known this day might come, but neither had prepared for the depth of their attachment to this human who had become such an integral part of their lives. Marcus faced an impossible choice: return to his original world, or remain with these extraordinary beings who had become his family, knowing full well that his continued presence here would mean further transformation, potentially beyond recognition. As Marcus stood at the edge of their living space, staring at the coordinates flashing on his emergency beacon, Lyria approached him with determined steps. Her iridescent form seemed to glow brighter than ever, her galaxy-like eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made his breath catch. "You cannot leave," she declared, not as a request but as an immutable fact. Venara joined them, her patterned skin pulsing with agreement, creating a visual symphony of their unified resolve. The rescue team's arrival grew imminent, their approach detectable through the planet's energy field. Yet instead of preparing for departure, Lyria and Venara initiated a plan that would alter everything. They led Marcus to their most sacred chamber, a room that existed somewhere between physical space and pure energy. Here, the very fabric of their world seemed malleable, responding to their collective will. Lyria explained that they could anchor Marcus to their reality permanently, creating a bond that would transcend both physical and metaphysical boundaries. The process required Marcus's complete consent and participation. As they began the ritual, Venara's patterns intertwined with Lyria's light displays, creating a vortex of energy that enveloped them all. Marcus felt his consciousness expanding, touching aspects of this world he'd only glimpsed before. Memories of his human life flashed before him, his family, his friends, the blue skies of Earth. But they were accompanied by visions of what his future could be here, with these remarkable beings who had become his everything. Through this shared experience, Marcus understood the true depth of Lyria and Venara's feelings. Their love for him wasn't just romantic or protective. It was a fundamental connection that spanned dimensions of existence he'd only begun to comprehend. As the ritual progressed, he felt their essences merging with his, not erasing his humanity but enhancing it, elevating it to something greater than he'd ever imagined possible. When the rescue team finally arrived, they found only empty ruins where the alien structure had stood. Their sensors detected no signs of human life, only strange energy patterns that defied analysis. Back on Earth, Marcus's file would eventually be marked as missing presumed deceased, while in another part of the galaxy, a transformed being walked between worlds, carrying the love of two extraordinary women in every step he took. The transformation wasn't instantaneous, nor was it without its trials. In the days following the ritual, Marcus found himself caught between two states of existence, his human self and something far greater, yet undefined. His body shimmered with faint light one moment, only to return to its more familiar form the next. Lyria and Venara stayed by his side constantly, their presence a steadying force as he navigated this new reality. They explained that his essence had been woven into the fabric of their world, but full integration would take time, a delicate process akin to learning how to breathe anew. At first, Marcus struggled with basic tasks. Walking felt foreign, as though gravity itself had shifted unpredictably beneath his feet. Eating became an exercise in trial and error. Some foods nourished him while others caused violent reactions. Even speech faltered at times, his voice blending unintentionally with the melodic tones native to Lyria and Venara's language. Yet through it all, they never wavered. Venara taught him grounding techniques, guiding him through meditations that connected him to the planet's energy field. Lyria, ever the scientist, monitored his progress meticulously, adjusting their methods when necessary. Their bond deepened during these vulnerable moments. There was no room for pretense or pride now. Marcus relied on them completely, and they accepted him without hesitation. One evening, as they sat together under the twin moons, Marcus admitted aloud what he'd only dared think before. "I don't know who I am anymore." His words hung heavy in the air, raw with emotion. To his surprise, both women smiled, not out of pity, but understanding. "You are becoming?" Lyria said softly, her hand reaching out to touch his chest where his heart beat steadily despite everything. "This is not about losing yourself, Marcus. It is about expanding." Venara nodded, her patterns glowing warmly. "Think of water flowing into a river. The water doesn't cease to exist. It simply becomes part of something larger." It was then that Marcus realized their love for him wasn't possessive or controlling. It was expansive, like the universe itself. They didn't want to change him so much as help him grow into whatever he was meant to become. And in doing so, they revealed depths of themselves he hadn't fully understood before. Lyria, for all her brilliance and composure, carried a quiet longing, an ache for connection she'd buried beneath centuries of independence. Venara, whose warmth seemed endless, harbored fears of inadequacy, doubting whether she could truly be enough for someone from another world. Their vulnerabilities made them even more beautiful to him, more real. As weeks turned into months, Marcus began to embrace his transformation. He discovered new abilities, subtle at first, then increasingly profound. He could communicate telepathically over short distances, his thoughts intertwining seamlessly with theirs. His senses expanded beyond anything he'd imagined possible. He could feel the pulse of life in plants, hear the whispers of creatures miles away. Most astonishingly, he found he could manipulate the environment around him, shaping small portions of their living space with nothing more than intent. When he accidentally created a floating sphere of light during dinner one night, Lyria laughed until tears streamed down her face, while Venara proudly declared it adorable. But not every discovery was joyful. As Marcus grew stronger, darker truths about their world came to light. The Straneth raiders weren't merely opportunistic invaders. They were agents of a larger threat, one that sought to exploit the planet's unique energy for conquest. Lyria revealed fragments of her people's history, tales of wars fought and civilizations lost in the pursuit of power. Venara shared stories of refugees who had fled their homelands, seeking sanctuary in hidden places like this desert oasis. Together, they painted a picture of a fragile peace maintained by secrecy and sacrifice. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settle onto his shoulders. This wasn't just their fight anymore, it was his too. But instead of fear, he felt resolve. For the first time in his life, he truly belonged somewhere, and he would do whatever it took to protect it. With Lyria and Venara by his side, he trained harder than ever, honing his newfound abilities while learning advanced combat techniques from both women. Their sparring sessions became legendary, blending grace and ferocity in ways that left even seasoned warriors awestruck. Yet amidst the preparation for battles yet to come, there were moments of pure joy. Marcus introduced Lyria and Venara to Earth traditions, celebrating holidays like Christmas with makeshift decorations and singing carols that echoed hauntingly through their crystalline home. In return, they showed him festivals from their cultures, vibrant celebrations filled with music, dance, and lights that painted the sky in impossible colors. These experiences bound them closer still, creating memories neither war nor time could erase. One such memory stood out above the rest. On the anniversary of the day they'd found him by the river, Lyria and Venara surprised Marcus with a gift unlike any other. They led him to a secluded grove where bioluminescent flowers bloomed in cascading waves of color. At its center stood a tree unlike any he'd seen before. Its branches reached toward the heavens, each leaf pulsing with golden light. Beneath it lay a blanket, and on the blanket sat 3 figures carved from crystal, each bearing unmistakable likenesses of Marcus, Lyria, and Venara. "This is our bond," Lyria explained, her voice trembling slightly. "A living monument to what we've built together," Venara added. "And a promise, for wherever you go, whatever you become, we will always find our way back to each other." Tears blurred Marcus's vision as he embraced them both, overwhelmed by the depth of their love. In that moment, he knew he would never leave. Not because they wouldn't let him, but because he couldn't bear to sever the ties that bound them. They were his family, his purpose, his future. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. A message arrived via ancient technology buried deep within the planet's crust. A warning from allies beyond the stars. The enemy they feared was closer than expected, moving inexorably toward their sanctuary. Preparations resumed with renewed urgency, and Marcus found himself facing a choice once again: to stand and fight alongside the women he loved, or flee to safety and preserve the fragile humanity still lingering within him. The decision weighed heavily on him as he stood atop a cliff overlooking the shimmering river where it all began. Below, Lyria and Venara worked tirelessly, fortifying defenses and rallying allies. Above, the twin suns blazed fiercely, casting long shadows across the desert. Marcus closed his eyes, letting the wind carry his thoughts to the horizon and beyond. When he finally descended to join them, his expression was resolute. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Not as separate beings, but as one entity forged from trust, love, and the unbreakable bonds of shared destiny. The day Marcus fully embraced his new life, he stood with Lyria and Venara beneath the golden glow of the twin suns, their hands intertwined in a ceremony unlike any Earth had ever seen. The crystalline tree from the grove now served as their altar, its golden leaves shimmering brighter than ever, as if it too celebrated this union. Friends and allies, both human refugees who had found solace on this world and members of Lyria and Venara's people, gathered around, their laughter and music filling the air with joy. Marcus wore a flowing garment that seemed to shift between colors, crafted by Venara herself, while Lyria adorned his brow with a circlet made from the bioluminescent flowers of the desert. Together, they exchanged vows not just in words but in shared energy, their combined light forming patterns in the sky that told the story of their journey. From the riverbank where they first met, through battles fought side by side, to this moment of unity. It was a bond deeper than marriage, a merging of souls, three becoming one. In the years that followed, their family grew in ways no one could have predicted. Their children were miracles born of both worlds, each unique yet unmistakably tied to their parents' love. Some had Lyria's iridescent skin and galaxy-like eyes, others carried Venara's warm amber tones and pulsing patterns, and still others bore traces of Marcus's humanity. His smile, his laugh, his stubborn determination. They filled their home with chaos and wonder, their tiny feet leaving glowing trails across the living floor as they chased after floating spheres of light their father conjured for their amusement. Lyria became not only a mother but also a teacher, passing down her vast knowledge to their curious brood. She showed them how to read the stars, how to harness the planet's energy, and how to think critically about the universe around them. Venara nurtured their creativity and empathy, teaching them songs from her people and stories of resilience. Under her care, even the most rambunctious child learned patience and kindness. And Marcus? He brought earth into their lives every day, baseball games played with floating orbs, bedtime tales of knights and dragons, and impromptu dance parties to the sound of rock music he'd memorized from his old life. Their home became a sanctuary not just for their family, but for others seeking peace. Refugees from war-torn planets arrived, drawn by rumors of a place where differences were celebrated rather than feared. Lyria and Venara opened their arms wide, welcoming these strangers and helping them integrate into their community. Marcus worked tirelessly alongside them, using his hybrid abilities to bridge gaps between species, fostering understanding where there had once been mistrust. Over time, their little corner of the desert transformed into a thriving haven, a testament to redemption and hope. Of course, life wasn't without its challenges. There were moments when Marcus missed Earth so deeply it felt like a physical ache, when Lyria struggled to reconcile her independent nature with the demands of motherhood, and when Venara doubted whether she was doing enough to shield their children from the harsh realities of the galaxy. But together, they faced these trials head-on, leaning on one another for strength and finding solutions that honored all parts of themselves. One particularly memorable challenge came when their eldest daughter, Lyra, named after both mothers, began exhibiting powers far beyond anything they'd anticipated. At just 6 years old, she accidentally created a storm that flooded half the settlement. While everyone else panicked, Marcus, Lyria, and Venara approached the situation with calm determination. They taught Lyra how to control her gifts, turning what could have been a disaster into an opportunity for growth. By the time she turned 10, she was leading weather control initiatives that ensured bountiful harvests for their community. As the years passed, their reputation spread far beyond their desert oasis. Stories of the human man who married 2 alien women and built a utopia inspired countless others to seek harmony instead of conflict. Even the Stranath raiders, once bitter enemies, began sending envoys to negotiate peace treaties. It wasn't easy, old wounds ran deep, but under Marcus, Lyria, and Venara's guidance, former adversaries found common ground, working together to heal the scars of past wars. And then there were the quiet moments, the ones that truly define their happiness. Sitting together under the twin moons, watching their children play tag among the glowing plants, laughing over dinner as they recounted the day's adventures, their voices blending into a symphony of love and belonging, holding each other close during storms, feeling the thrum of energy that connected them all, not just as individuals, but as a family bound by something greater than themselves. On the anniversary of their wedding, they returned to the river where it all began. The water still shimmered with violet and silver hues, reflecting the changes in the sky above. Marcus knelt by the bank, dipping his fingers into the cool current, while Lyria and Venara stood beside him, their presence steady and sure. "Do you ever regret staying?" Lyria asked softly, her voice carrying the weight of unspoken fears. Marcus smiled, looking up at them with eyes that glowed faintly in the twilight. How could I regret this? You gave me a second chance at life, not just survival but true living. I wouldn't trade a single moment. Venara's patterns brightened, warmth radiating from her as she rested a hand on his shoulder. We're glad you stayed, she said simply, her tone leaving no room for doubt. As they walked back home, hand in hand, the future stretched before them like an endless horizon. They had built something extraordinary, a life rooted in love, sacrifice, and redemption. And though the galaxy remained vast and unpredictable, they faced it together, knowing that whatever came next, they would always find their way back to each other. For theirs was a bond forged not just in the heat of battle or the depths of despair, but in the quiet certainty that they were stronger together than apart. Under the watchful eyes of the twin sons, surrounded by their children and the thriving community they'd created, Marcus, Lyria, and Venara found their happily ever after. Not as an ending, but as a beginning. A promise of endless tomorrows filled with laughter, discovery, and the unwavering knowledge that love, no matter how unconventional, could conquer all.